Hi, it's Katrina! From ancient remains in an underwater cave to finding a lost World War II pilot, here are 8 spooky archaeological discoveries found underwater. Number 8. 9,000-year-old skeleton. With its beautiful beaches, rich culture, and underwater caves, Tulum is a popular spot for tourists looking for a thrilling getaway. But when a human skeleton was found submerged in a cenote, researchers didn't expect the discovery to completely rewrite history. Found in the Chanhol Cave in the Yucatan Peninsula, the skeleton belonged to a woman in her 30s, who's believed to be one of the first people to set foot in the Americas. But how did she end up in the underwater cave? Before the cenotes in the Yucatan were submerged, they became shelter for America's first settlers. As archaeologists continue to explore these underwater caverns, more are discovered, and sometimes they hold secrets to the ancient past. But the find in Chanhol Cave is not the first. In 2014, divers in Tulum discovered the remains of a young girl that date back almost 11,000 years ago. Another skeleton was found in the early 2000s in a Tulum cave, dating 11,570 years ago. But that doesn't necessarily mean the final resting place of these people was particularly peaceful. The woman's skeleton found in Chanhol Cave had evidence of not only a bacterial disease that showed deformations on her skull, she also suffered 3 serious head injuries that shattered her head. Among one of the oldest skeletons found in the Americas, scientists faced major problems when trying to radiocarbon date the remains. Because the bones had been underwater for so long, the collagen or protein in the remains that helped to determine their age was almost completely leached away. But by using a different technique, as well as gathering charcoal samples from ancient fire pits nearby, scientists were able to pinpoint that humans had used the cave for at least 1,200 years before sea levels rose enough to submerge the cave system. In comparing the skulls to others found across the Americas, researchers came to the conclusion that there were 2 distinct groups living in the area at the time. In dating the skeleton in Chanhol Cave to at least 9,000 years old, scientists went one step further. Because the body had skeletonized before the crusts in the cave system formed, the remains are likely much older, meaning the settlers were there at least 8,000 years before the Maya culture first emerged. Number 7. Russia's Loch Ness Monster. The remoteness of Siberia lends itself to stories of mysteries and sightings. One such tale of a large underwater creature from people living near a remote lake took on a life of its own when a team of scientists found the skeletal remains of a strange creature in 2013. Known as the Devil of Lake Labinkir, scientists from the Russian Geographical Society found the jaws and skeleton of an animal while exploring the lake to gather water, plant, and animal samples. Using an underwater scanner, the large jawbone and skeleton were found in the lake, whose mysterious reputation for never freezing like other lakes in the region has long mystified scientists. With volcanic rock making up the lake bed, some believe an underground hot spring may be what keeps the lake warm enough to prevent it from freezing during those long, cold Siberian winters. But could the strange creature survive in such conditions? Initial stories of a sea creature in the lake surfaced in 1953, when a team of Soviet geologists spotted a large underwater animal that they described as being the size of an orca. Another team in 2012 registered something unusual on their echo-sounding device that was bigger than a group of fish, but the source of the sound is still unknown. Dubbed the Labinkir Devil, the monster reportedly living in the lake has been whispered about for centuries, with some believing it could have been an ichthyosaur, an extinct marine reptile. So what is the Labinkir Devil? In Russian folklore, there are stories of a lake monster inhabiting Lake Brosno in western Russia as far back as the 13th century. The creature is believed to have emerged from the lake, turned boats upside down, and even being the cause of locals disappearing. Whether there is something strange lurking in Russia's lakes, it is obvious that Siberia's stark landscape is at the very least home to some terrifying tales of what lies beneath the water's surface. Number 6. Ancient Aboriginal Sites. When most people think of the Aboriginal people of Australia, the great expanse of the Outback is what first comes to mind. But a new discovery in the waters off the Australian coast shed new light on the history of these fascinating people. Dating back 7,000 years, the artifacts were found in what are now known as intertidal zones, and at the bottoms of lakes that were once dry land before the last ice age. Hundreds of stone tools substantially larger than other similar tools found on land in the same area, including grinding stones, were discovered by the team in 2 underwater archaeological sites in Western Australia. People first arrived in Australia 65,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower than they are today, meaning ancient peoples had 2 million square kilometers more land than now. Even though you might think that the sites would have been destroyed by rising seas, these survived and were protected by layers of sand on the seabed. Using aerial and underwater remote sensing, divers were able to explore these ancient sites and ended up uncovering artifacts ranging from 7,000 to 8,500 years old. Many of the objects had marine life growing on them, but the team identified a number of worked stone tools. Experts hope that this find will open the door to future expeditions to uncover more Australian archaeology as a way to better understand the Aboriginal people and their history on the continent. Number 5. Skulls on stakes. In 2017, archaeologists found a Stone Age settlement known as Canal Jordan in an area where an ancient lake once stood in southwest Sweden. But the remnants of the shallow lake was just the beginning. The excavation ended up unearthing the skulls and skull fragments of 11 individuals. Men, women, children, and infants were all represented in the remains, dating to roughly 8,000 years ago. But there was a deeper story to be told from the remains, with evidence of bones from other parts of the body. Animal bones and bone tools were also found, as well as 2 human skulls that had been pierced with wooden stakes, leading researchers to believe the site was ritualistic. Some of the other skulls, though not mounted on stakes, had evidence of once having been mounted the same way. Scientists believe this site may contain the only known example of this type of practice from the Mesolithic era. So, were these skulls from murdered natives, or maybe from ritual burials or used as trophies, as in other ancient sites? Another burial site in Sweden has evidence of a similar tradition where the bones of individuals were removed from their graves to display their skulls until their bodies decomposed, after which the bones were reinterred. Adding more mystery to the discovery was the female skull found with a fragment from another woman's skull stuffed inside. It will take further DNA analysis to find out if the 2 women were related, or if this was some other bizarre practice. Scientists can test the remains for specific isotopes in the bones to find out whether the skulls were of local Swedes, or if they came from some far-off place. Believing that bands of nomadic Swedes roamed the forests and shores there some 8,000 years ago, these hunter-gatherers seem to have used Canal Jordan as a sacred meeting spot. Now the task remains of determining whether it was to honor their dead or to display the remains of their defeated enemies. Number 4. Submerged World War II pilot. During World War II, many lives were lost, including that of a U.S. pilot who was shot down while flying over the Pacific Ocean. Trapped in the wreckage for more than 70 years, the remains of the soldier became obscured under sand and sea life. But in 2018, the U.S. Navy reported that an underwater recovery team had located the remains. Spending over 12 hours each day over a span of a month and a half, divers found the remains in one of 2 aircraft shot down near the Republic of Palau. Using heavy machinery, including a crane to lift heavy objects, as well as a variety of archaeological tools to meticulously scour through sediment, the team worked to recover the pilot, who was one of 4 service members who died when both planes were shot down. First located in 2015, the aircrafts include an F-6F-3 Hellcat and a TBM-1C Avenger, which were painstakingly explored, with mariners operating cranes to lift salvage baskets filled with sand, which they then sifted through looking for the World War II remains. Taking multiple dives to fill one basket and 5 hours to sift through each one, it was a tiring but fulfilling process for the teams, who hoped to bring closure to at least one family who suffered the loss of their loved one to the war. Number 3. Underwater stone structure. When a strange cone-shaped structure was discovered in the waters of the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists were initially puzzled. Weighing an estimated 60,000 tons, the 32-foot-high structure has a diameter of 230 feet, both higher and wider than the outer stone circle of Stonehenge. Believing it to be a stone cairn, a mound or pile of rocks that sometimes serve as monuments, burial sites, or navigational aids, the structure was first found in 2003, when sonar surveys were conducted in the area. Each boulder measures up to 3 feet wide, with no signs of cutting or chiseling. Believed to have been made by humans, researchers believe it could be more than 4,000 years old and was submerged as the sea level rose. Other similar megalithic structures have been found close to the Sea of Galilee, but until researchers can excavate the structure, the origin, who built it, and why are still as mysterious as the stone structure itself. Number 2. Lost Locomotive. Off the coast of New Jersey, something old is lurking, but even though it is not a mysterious sea creature, it is still just as eerie. Under 90 feet of water, the remnants of 2 lost locomotives sit covered in barnacles. Lost in the 1850s, the trains were found by a man who was mapping the bottom of the ocean in 1985. Using a device called a magnetometer, which measures the strength of magnetic fields, he located 2 massive metal objects. After a few dives, the objects came into stark focus. They were 2 rare Planet-class 222T model trains. The 15-ton trains were only produced for a short time and became obsolete almost as soon as they were produced because they were so small compared to other locomotives produced at the time. But how exactly did these 2 trains end up in the Atlantic? With no records of the trains being lost and none of them even being built in the first place, the steam engines are very much a mystery. How do you lose a train and not report it? But that didn't stop experts from trying to come up with an explanation. Some believe the trains were on a barge traveling from Boston to the mid-Atlantic when they encountered a storm. Whether the trains fell off the barge or were dumped to lighten the load and prevent the ship from going down is still speculation. Either way, the trains did end up on the ocean floor where they continue to rust and accumulate barnacles for 160 years. These ancient relics remain 5 miles off the New Jersey coast until experts can bring them up to the surface to study them. Until then, they remain submerged like 2 ghostly figures of the past. Number 1. Lake of Skeletons. Spooky places don't necessarily need to be big to pack a creepy punch. A small lake high in the Himalayas is home to up to 800 skeletons that perpetually reappear every summer when parts of the lake melt. Even more macabre, some of the bones still have hair and flesh attached to them. Originally discovered in 1942 by a British guard, the skeletons are much too old to have been connected to World War II. So when scientists conducted DNA analysis of 38 skeletons, they found they belonged to 3 genetically different groups who died 1,000 years apart. They had ancestry related to Southeast Asia and what is now Crete and Greece. Scientists originally believed most of the remains belonged to people who died there around 800 AD, but this discovery has changed our understanding of those who died there. That doesn't mean their reason for being there is any clearer, and no one is sure how they died. The bizarre thing is that many skeletons have blows to the head, leading scientists to think that some of the people must have been caught in a hailstorm with nowhere to hide. However, considering that some people died 1,000 years apart, it doesn't explain everyone in the lake. Researchers do know, though, that they did not die in an epidemic, and since there have been no weapons found nearby, a battle also seems out of the question. Because the lake is near a present-day pilgrimage route, it's possible the site was used for similar practices in the past, but the mystery behind the Mediterranean remains still lingers. With so many skeletons in one place, it makes sense that the lake was used as a graveyard, but the haunting sight of so many skeletons littering the shores of this small remote lake is enough to chill even the most seasoned traveler. Thanks for watching! Would you visit this lake? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!